Welcome to Decoding the Childcare Business. My name is Zuleika Hines, your host, and I'm so excited you're here with me today. That conversation today is so important because we have to think about you. What happens to your childcare business if you walk away tomorrow? But you may say, Ms. Zuleika, I don't have a childcare business yet. I don't know where to start. Why are we talking about succession planning at this moment? And let me tell you, the reason why I brought this conversation to today is that I had a very interesting conversation with a group family daycare operator. His name is Edwin. Edwin, if you're listening, thank you so much for being in the call with me this week. I really enjoy learning about you and your program and the direction that is open to you. I'm so excited about the opportunities that you have. But one of the things that he shared with me was I didn't consider succession. I know that I inherited the business from my family and I'm looking now to ways to grow, but I did not consider succession planning. I'm so young. And that's actually what many people think and look at their business, especially in the early stages. It's new, it's exciting, we're all in. We cannot consider, not even conceive what it would be like to consider succession planning. We're still trying to make ends meet. We're still trying to pay the bills. But if you don't know how you're going to end, you don't know how to plan for this moment, for where you are right now. Succession planning is very important. What happens to your childcare business if you walk away tomorrow? You don't even have to walk away. What happens to your childcare business if you decide to move, if you decide to retire, if you have a health issue? What happens to your childcare business? And fill in your own blank. Because it is important for us to start being proactive and planning our business. But before I move on, I have a small ask of you. Can you please go ahead and subscribe and like the channel? I'm seeing a lot of you interacting in the conversation, looking at the information, going back to it again, and I want to thank you for that. For those that have been with me every Sunday, thank you for joining in the conversation. And there's a lot more to come. We are building a community just for us, and I cannot wait to share that with you. But for me to grow and to continue providing you with this amazing information, continue to provide you with topics that are relevant to you and that you can learn from, I really need you. Take a moment, subscribe, like the channel, and help me bring Decoding the Childcare Business to all of us to not only grow, build, and expand, but to also be successful in doing a business that we love. What happens to your childcare business if you walk away tomorrow? Important disclaimer, this is for informational and educational purposes only. The content in this presentation is intended solely for general information and educational purposes. It does not constitute and should not be construed as financial, investment, tax, legal, accounting, real estate, or business advice of any kind. All examples and strategies are for illustrative purposes. Always consult a licensed financial advisor, a CPA attorney, a real estate professional before making any business or financial decisions. Beyond Basic Learning assumes no liability for decisions made based on the information presented in the series. But what I want to share with you is my life experience, what I went through, what I've done to be able to retire in my early 50s from the business that I built, grew, and loved. Most childcare owners have no exit plan. You see, when I started to explore childcare businesses, I started to pay close attention to the directors that were around me. Who were they? And I followed them. What did they do to build their business, grow their business, expand it, and then retire? What options were there available to me for my retirement? Because I had no children. Running 3 programs was a big commitment to my time, to me personally, and also to maintain the brand, because it was important for me to make sure that the school was being implemented according to the brand of Beyond Basic Learning. And so there were structures in place and there were policies in place. But at the same time, the reality is that childcare has a high turnover. I had to build good systems that would be able to survive changes that take place, not just with staff, but family. As I grew my program, I had to take a different approach. I had to be more of a visionary and trust others that would be also committed to the vision and carry out the philosophy and mission of Beyond Basic Learning. So when we talk about succession, when we talk about planning for our next move, we have to consider that an exit plan is a strategic, essential part of how you plan your business. You cannot just start a company or a business and not have a plan on how to exit the program. You will need to understand where in the trajectory of your business life cycle is going to be your exit as the operator of that business. And that is the conversation that we have today. Many of us have heard the quote, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Benjamin Franklin. 75% of childcare owners want to exit within the next 10 years. That's huge, folks. 75% of childcare owners want to exit within the next 10 years. Yet most have no formal plan in place. But just consider the opportunities. The flip side of that is that there are opportunities of childcare programs in your community that you can still tap into. 70% of small business never find a buyer when the owner is ready to leave. When I was ready to leave, I started looking for a buyer 12 months before my exit. 12 months before my exit, I started to consider who I wanted to transition my business to. And those are things that do not happen overnight. Those are relationships that must be cultivated. They must be nurtured. There's an element of trust. Only 30% successfully transfer ownership. Look at that. 75 to 90% of childcare owners' personal net worth is tied in their business and real estate. This is your most valuable asset. 75 to 90% of childcare owners' personal net worth is tied in their business and real estate. For me personally, the commercial spaces where I had my childcare center had a goodwill value that was intrinsic in the sale when I sold the program. So even though there was not a real estate that I owned, the way that I negotiated the lease, the way that I built predictable lease term payments for the next 15 and 20 years made my lease that much more valuable to a buyer. And that was what created the sale of my companies. The other part is that I already own real estate. I came into the childcare business owning a multifamily home, and I also owned other real estate. So when I went ahead and sold my childcare program, I still had real estate to be able to transition out of the childcare business. So I positioned myself structurally for a change, for a shift, and I considered what was it that I needed to make the transition successful. So 75% of childcare owners want to exit within the next 10 years. That also represents that migration of assets that we keep hearing in the news. The big transfer of wealth, folks, is also happening because childcare is that business that many operators will be retiring or closing, moving on. Small businesses never find a buyer when ready. And I know personally of individuals that had a great buyer interested in their program and they were not ready to pull the trigger. And guess what? The opportunity left them. And then after that, they really needed to sell because of health issues. But that same opportunity was no longer there. So my question to you, if you had to step away from your childcare business tomorrow, what would happen to it? Who would run it? Who would own it? Does anyone know the plan? That's really important. Take a deep breath. Exhale. You really got to think about that, folks. We cannot just go into a business and put 48 hours and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, turn, and not have an exit strategy. God forbid you have a health issue. I've been there. Have you? Who knows the plan? Who is able to run the program when you're not there? What does succession plan look like for you? We need to have that conversation now because childcare can be a profitable business for you. Yes, it can be a profitable business from you. You can retire successfully from owning a childcare business. There are ways for you to do that, but you also need to know what that looks like so you can be encouraged and excited to pursue it. Let's keep going. The 5 Ds. Oh, have you ever heard of the 5 Ds? Why owners leave before they're ready? Let me take you through them and take a screenshot of this because I want you to have an answer for yourself on these 5 Ds. 50% of all business exits are forced by one of these. Death, like a ship suddenly losing its captain. Without a plan, the center is left adrift and the family's left with a burden instead of a blessing. I know personally, a lot of personal stories here, folks. I know of a child care operator who passed away unexpectedly, and the child took over the home-based center. but there were other children that were also entitled to the estate. And because there was no clear path of who was going to take over the childcare center and who was going to own the home, there was a lot of angst, a lot of conversations. There was a lot of paperwork that needed to align. There were people that needed to have certain credentials in order to get a new license, a new business ID verification, and a new qualification with the Department of Licensing. Death became a burden for the family, and the two children that did not want to move into the business either felt that they were losing out on the home or losing out on the business. If there was a death in the family childcare business, how is the succession plan going to take place? Who is going to be the next person taking care of the business and taking it to the next level? Are you planning for that? Disability. When I became a life insurance agent, I did become a life insurance agent because there was so much to learn. I don't sell life insurance policies. I just wanted to be familiar and aware to understand the benefit, because I benefited so much from having the right policy for myself and for my business. But what I learned is that people will experience disability a lot and with a higher level of probability that would impact their business. So a disability has a greater probability of impacting your business right now. A car accident, a slip and fall, picking something the wrong way, picking up a child and then twisting your back. A disability is a reality and so unexpected. And a health crisis prevents you from running a day-to-day operation. What are you going to do to make sure that you're ready for that? A divorce is also a real thing, because like trying to cut a single pie perfectly in half, how do you separate the business from a divorce? A split that forces a division in the business assets often require a sudden sale or closure. Can your business survive a divorce? How is the revenue going to be separated? Is the divorce going to be a monthly payment that you have to make to the spouse? Or is the divorce going to be a capital gains that after the sale, the assets are divided between the two? Did you put a plan in place? How are we going to ensure that the child care center continues and everyone is made, if not whole, partially whole? How are we going to address that? A disagreement. If you are two people move together into this LLC and are looking to go into two different directions, how are you going to split yourselves between the two different directions? Are you going to sell the business? Is one person going to have it over the other? Is this going to be a legal drawn out battle? Or did you have it into your operating agreement under your LLC? Did you consider your exit even with your partner before you started your company? Because there's a lot of excitement. Oh my God, I have a partner. We're doing this together. We're married. Or she's also a teacher, or I'm also a director. And we bring all these amazing things into the business. How do you plan to divide the assets between the two? How are we going to keep this running? And then the last D is distress, like running out of gas miles from the next station, severe financial trouble, regulatory issues, or extreme owner burnout. And I would like to add to the stress, policy changes. Because a policy like Universal Pre-K 2 or Universal Pre-K 3, or in New Jersey was the Abbott program, those distress can immediately suck out that population. Your enrollment can go from 1 year close to 80% enrolled to the next year being 60% enrolled. And so now you have fluctuation in your enrollment. But if you plan accordingly, you can overcome that too. But by not having a succession plan and not being able to understand how to mitigate these 5 Ds, then guess what happened, folks? You find yourself in a situation where your business closes and the opportunities are forgone. You lost great opportunities because you were not able to overcome the storm. Like, storms are going to come. There's no question about it. Storms will be there. It's not that you won't have storms. It's how did you prepare for those storms by being able to give yourself an answer to these 5 Ds. When you organize, it's doing something before you do something. When you organize, it's what you do before you do something. You organize yourself so that when you do it, it is not all mixed up. So, in one of the 5 Ds happen tomorrow, will your business survive? Will your family be protected? Take a moment and think about that. Yes, you want to open a childcare program tomorrow. Yes, you're ready to build your own center. But when we do this, we want to organize ourselves. So that way we at least have an idea of how we're going to address these 5 Ds. Why is succession harder in childcare? That's a very important distinction. Why is succession harder in childcare? The typical childcare dollar, staff and payroll, we know is about 50 to 55%, teachers, directors, and benefits. Facilities and operations can eat up about 20 to 25% of the revenue. So it leaves a profit margin anywhere between 15 to 30%. What is actually left over? And by the way, a 15 to 30% profit margin is typically in a center-based program or in multi-operator programs. So if you have multiple group family daycare providers, you are able to have a higher profit margin. I was sharing with Edwin before that it was easier to run 3, 4 childcare programs than it is to run one. It's so much easier to run multiple programs than it is to run one. And so what the question that I have for you is that how you organize yourself to be able to meet your growth is part of your succession plan and being able to build from that to your next level. Think of your revenue as a freshly baked pie. By the time you serve your staff, you pay the rent, and over operations, there's only a small slice left over. Because childcare operators are on a tight margin, it is much harder to build a massive cash reserve for your own retirement. That is why you need a strategic exit plan, not just a savings account. And I hope, folks, that you're not putting your money on a high yield account. And next, I hope you're doing more than just a high yield savings account. But for this presentation, it is important to note that because we are not a high margin, we do have one thing in our favor. And you know what that is? Time. We have time on our side. So even though we may not have the high windfall of a high margin business, being able to stock away like a squirrel, little by little by little, in the proper investment vehicles will leave us with a very nice retirement. But you have to be strategic, intentional, and plan ahead. What is your business actually worth? Before you can plan an exit, you need a baseline, okay? So before we plan an exit, you have to have a baseline. While professional valuations are very complicated, the back of the napkin math for childcare centers is very simple. So I'm going to simplify this. Again, you need to speak to an accountant, to a professional childcare business resale realtor. There's those out there as well. But to really think about what your childcare business is worth, the industry rule of thumb is the childcare business typically sells for a multiplier of their annual profit earnings. So if your annual profit, excluding real estate, if your annual profit is 2 times to 4 times your annual profit. Well, Zuleika, what does that look like? I'm not good at math. Can you break that down for me? Sure. Let me give you this example. So if you generate $100,000 in true profit each year, you take 100,000 times 2, that's 200,000, right? So a 3-time multiplier is 100,000 times 3, 300,000. A 4-time multiplier is 100,000 times 4, 400,000. So that's a way that childcare business are evaluated. Other investors or potential buyer will look at the sale of your business. What would your childcare business sell for? What number do I feel is worthy of your current revenue stream? Now, keep in mind that you may have other revenue potential in your childcare center. You can say, well, I could use the upstairs floor for a summer camp, or I could use the basement for doing adult mommy and me classes on how to bake, classes on nutrition, classes on candle making. But if that's not part of your revenue stream, it is a question mark. It's not something that they can actually hang their money on. It is just potential. So the potential is not going to be what they're going to look at. They're going to look at what are you generating right now. They're going to go back 3 to 5 years and determine what your business is worth today. And that's how they're going to determine what they're going to offer you for your childcare business. Do you know your true annual profit? Do you know your number? If you do not know what it's worth, you can't plan how to sell. So if you don't know what your childcare center is worth, you cannot think about how to sell it, your succession planning, or how to create even a concept, how you're plan to retire. Understanding what your childcare business is worth is very important. The franchise option, why it costs, and what you can get out of it. I decided to pursue independent ownership. I had a master's in business administration. I had a master's in educational leadership. I have another master's in environmental conservation education. And so I was able to create systems in place to run my program, to build and to grow. But not everyone is comfortable creating systems. So when it comes to the franchise model, many operators feel comfortable because it's a proven system, the brand is known, it's easier to sell, it's a higher value to sell, and there's high cost and royalty. So there's high upfront investment, plus you pay yourself 6 to 7% of your gross revenue forever. However, for me, a franchise format, entering into a franchise setup, with a franchise, you're always paying a fee to the franchisor. So it never goes away. It's like a permanent fixed tax that never goes away. So the franchise model, although it creates all of these proven systems and is easier to sell, you also are committed to making a payment to the franchisor forever. But while you develop an independent ownership model, which is how I build my program, I keep 100% of the profits. I have complete creative control. Although it's harder to sell, some places may not consider that a hard sell because you negotiated a very good lease or you own a very good building, you are in a great location. So selling the childcare center, although it may appear harder, you get to retain more of the benefit of that as well. And having sold 3 programs, I found that that was the best approach for me, and I found that to be very successful. The big lesson is that franchisees sell for more money because their systems are documented. If you want to stay independent, you must build systems so the business can run without you. And having good systems to run without you is key. The real estate play. I love this play, and I really recommend it for so many of you. Many of my mentors were able to take advantage of the real estate play. This is another way to do succession planning. You keep the building and you sell the stress. If you own the building, you can always sell the operation of the business. You actually own 2 separate assets. You own the childcare business, which is the operations, and then you also own the real estate, which is the property. Remember in that conversation we had in a prior episode about forming your LLC. We had the LLC for the business and also for the goodwill. When you buy the building is under its own LLC, and the operation of the childcare center is under a different LLC. Therefore, the childcare operator rents from the building LLC. And that's how you keep, in a real estate owner-landlord operation, the 2 entities separate. You don't have to sell both at the same time. A powerful exit strategy is to sell the business operations to a new owner, but keep the real estate. You may have a very strong director that's been with you for a long time. You can sell her the operations of the childcare center. You retain the building and she pays you the rent for the building. Your transition from a stress owner operator to a passive landlord is great because you collect a steady rent check every month without having to manage the staff, parents, or the daily operations. Consider that almost like a retirement because now you get a monthly payment every month for the building that you are renting to the operation. So that becomes your estate planning. That becomes your retirement tool. And that is a great way to separate yourself from the operations, have a perpetual income, and at the same time still have inheritance for your children. If you at a later date want to sell the building, you can still do that and have a windfall from the sale. You can sell it to the same operator, or you can sell it to another investor who's interested in the building and also keeping the operations. This is more like a sandbox analogy. Think of it like a playground. Right now, you're in the sandbox every day, building the castles, managing the kids, and cleaning up the mess, right? But when you become the landlord, you step out of the sandbox, you still own the sandbox, but now you just charge someone else to play with it. And that's so important, the real estate play, because the real estate play is that rental revenue that comes to you every month and that you can bank on to help you as you move on from the childcare business. When you're thinking of starting a childcare program or being able to grow a childcare program, look around you. Is there an opportunity for you to own the building? Is there a market in that space? Like, will people come? Don't overlook that when you're looking to buy the building. Will people come to your building? Will people come to your childcare center? We talked about strategic ways to position your childcare center in areas where you can capture a market. But now you own the building, which is an asset, and you also own the operations of the childcare center. This also is applicable to a group family daycare. When you own that home, can you revert it back to a home? Can it be a home again? Or can you still have an apartment in that home and sell the operations of the building? Now you're living rent-free in your own place because you were smart enough to build another level, another unit that is completely independent from the operations. And now you can retire there without having to be hands-on in the operations. You see how much value this brings to you? How important it is for you to go in with your head held high, with your eyes wide open? Very, very important. Being a landlord gives you perpetual income for any program. So you don't need a massive commercial facility to become a landlord. This strategy works whether you operate a retail plaza or out of your own living room. A center-based program, you have a commercial lease, you sell the business operations to a new owner, but retain ownership of the commercial building. Therefore, they take care of all the operations, the triple net income. Remember what we talked about. When you lease out a commercial space, they pay for the taxes, they pay for the insurance, they pay for the maintenance, and you get a monthly check every month because you gave them the opportunity to hold onto that particular lease. So you got triple net income on a center-based program. Home-based programs, you move to a new house and lease your current fully licensed home to an up-and-coming childcare provider. The downgrade strategy, you buy a new home and open a smaller group family daycare provider. You keep generating income with less stress while renting out your original property. A home-based program also has a strategy. So if you're in a center-based program and you decide I love childcare. I'm not ready to fully retire right now, but I don't own a real estate. I still don't own a childcare program. I would rather downgrade to a group family daycare provider, open a group family daycare program with a smaller space, something more manageable. And by doing that, I can own the building. And at one point, if I'm incapacitated, if I have any of the 5Ds that happen to me, I can sell the operations, or I can sell the home, or both, and move to a facility that is more adequate for my next stage in life. And this is important. This is so important. I had a very good mentor, also a really good friend, whose family owned a childcare operation for over 30 years, a group family daycare for over 30 years. And they were in a brownstone. And after being in that brownstone for many years, the owner of the brownstone passed away. And the new owners of the building wanted the building back, to revert it back to rentals. And they wanted the childcare business to leave. Imagine being in a place for 30 years and having to leave and not owning the real estate and not knowing where to go. This is real, folks. This is where we trip up as childcare operators and directors. This is where we personally go ahead and make the mistakes of not planning for a succession plan. And the sad thing about it is that when the daughter was taking over the childcare program, and when I shared this, they felt a bit offended that I said to them, what is your plan? What is your succession plan? What are you going to do? Because to become a group family daycare operator in a center-based program, her qualifications had to change. And she was in the process of going to school and finishing her qualifications, but it was not enough to meet the center-based requirements under Article 47 in New York to run a childcare program without having to hire someone else to assume that role. And when you hire someone else to assume that role, then that someone else also wants to assume the pay rate that goes along with that role, because now they're in a leadership position and you are competing with other childcare providers and other center-based programs in your state. What do you do? How do you plan? How do you make sure your succession plan is clear? And so you can move from a center-based program to a home-based program. But instead of them moving from a home-based program, they moved to a center-based program where they leased the space, they did not own it. What else could they have done? They had 30 years of history. They could have used their numbers to buy a home-based property when the opportunity arose and continue to build a group family daycare center. And while they did that, they would have a place to live in the same building. And that's what you have to think about. You have to be strategic. So can your current property become a retirement paycheck? What would it take to get it ready for a tenant? When I thought about selling my schools, I always thought of it from the point of view, can I build a school that I could later on move from if I had the right foundation in place? But the key for me, for you to understand, is that by having a clear pathway to succession planning, you can replicate it. You can build other programs. You could build other schools out of the same foundation. So once you have a plan in place, you know what your succession plan looks like, you know how you're going to exit your childcare program, then all of the building blocks that you create are already being built with that lens in mind. Isn't that amazing? That means you're going to have really good systems in place that will help you create the succession plan that gives you a financial freedom. When I build my school, I make sure I build it with the systems in place from the very, very beginning. And that's what I want for you to do. Build it with the systems in place. Ms. Zuleika, what are the 4 exit pathways? Which one fits me? What are the ways that I can move forward and move to the next journey in my life? There are 4 pathways that you can consider. 1, family succession. Passing the business to a child or family member. It keeps the legacy intact, but requires careful training and clear boundaries. And this is beautiful. You can have one of your own children take over the program and want to grow and expand it, or are open to taking on and building another center or another school. Now you move to 3, 4 childcare programs because your family is on the same page. It's a beautiful thing and something that you have to align, but you should also know your exit strategy. Why did one of those siblings get married and then divorce? Will the divorce impact all of you or just that child? And how would that be split up? How will the other spouse be made whole? Internal management buyout. I've seen a really good teacher grow in the program of one of my mentors, become a director, evolve in that space, and then was able to position herself to buy that center from her own mentor. That was amazing. And to see that she is still doing this today and then putting her own stamps and then building from that her own vision and her own mission. That's still possible. The third is selling to a third party, having a person come in and interested in your program and building that program. They already have a childcare business. They want to grow in that location, in that space, and you meet their next step. You meet their next level and selling it to a third party. And then number four is acquisition by a larger operator. And for me, that was Bright Horizon. There was a larger operator that wanted to have a larger footprint in Hoboken, New Jersey. And so they already had their systems and they already had their investors. They already had their teachers and their programs and their school and their philosophy and their logo. And what they were looking for is my location, my families, and the lease. That was amazing that they wanted to continue to use and have for their benefit. Which of these four paths feel most aligned with your personal goals and the legacy you want to leave behind? Real talk, I didn't have any children. I had a stepdaughter and I was hoping that she would be encouraged into going into the business, but that's not the business she wanted to go into. Even though I come from parents who are educators, my siblings didn't have children of age that were interested in taking over a childcare business. So there's different things that come into play. And me personally, I did not want to grow into becoming such a large operation. I was so hands-on with my program that expanding beyond the four programs that I already have and hitting that space for me was my goal. I did not want to grow any larger. So I looked for operators in my community that were able to take over the program, and I was able to sell the program to them. I looked for a larger operator to also acquire the program. And actually, they approached me after I had my business open at 5 years. They were interested in buying my program. And I kept their phone number. I never threw it away. I just kept it in my directory because you never know when you're going to need to revert back to it. So don't close yourself to opportunities that come your way. The timing may not be right at that moment, but there's going to be a time that the timing may be just right. Remember, 30% of operators only sell when they're ready. That means there's 70% of operators that are willing to sell and they don't have a buyer. And if they had a buyer, they lost the number. They just dismissed it like it was no big deal. They felt that that's not them. They're too young. They're not ready. And so they did not keep the conversation going, or at least the opportunity in a safe space that they can look back to. So don't close yourself out to a future opportunity. Where do you sit in your trajectory of opening, growing, building, and expanding your childcare program? What does that exit strategy look like for you? Do you have succession planning? Let's take a moment. Oh my God, we talked about so much here, right? Please don't forget to like and share below. And I know that there is so much more to discuss. And I'm going to be with you every step of the journey. I'm going to share something with you that I haven't really spoken about out loud. I have created a masterclass for you on my website, www.beyondbasiclearning.com. I'm starting to get names because I don't want the masterclass to be large. I want to keep it very small and intimate. This is a masterclass that we're going to be starting later in the fall, not now. But once we get the 10 individuals that want to be part of that masterclass, we're going to close it and we're going to just work through each of these stages together. I'm going to bring speakers to talk to us about this. We're going to delve deeper into some of the 5 Ds that we spoke about here in this presentation on episode number 11. And we're going to talk about succession planning. We're going to break down what systems I had in place to be able to successfully sell my business. And all of this I'm going to bring to you. So I need you to go to my website, beyondbasiclearning.com, and be sure to add your name to the waiting list so I can be sure to send you the information, especially you that have been so faithful to watch me every Sunday. I want to make sure you're the first one to participate in our masterclass. What do you want to do with this business? What do you want this business to become? What do you want this business to become? Take a moment to step back from the daily operations. Fast forward 5-10 years from now. My husband always says, what would your 60-year-old self tell you right now? What would your 50-year-old self tell you right now? When you finally walk out of those doors for the last time, what did you leave behind? What did it leave you behind? Can you retire? Can you recreate a perpetual income that feeds you every month after all the long hours and days and work that you put into it? Are you going to sell? Are you going to pass it on? Are you going to convert it? Children are the living messages we will send to a time we will not see. Neil Pottsman. Your business is also a message to the future. You have to plan it with intention. Your legacy starts today. Start by calculating your number. Call your CPA. Talk to your family. You have spent years building a safe place for other people's children. Now it's time to build a safe future for your own. It's time to plan a business, understanding that it should give you a future. that you can be proud of, that you can own. Your exit is not the end. It is the beginning of your legacy. You're going to start planning today, and you're going to start planning intentionally. Don't forget to subscribe to Decoding the Childcare Business for more strategies to scale, manage, and exit. My name is Zuleika Hines, Decoding the Childcare Business, and I can't wait to meet you.